Well, are you convinced? I heard some of the groups doing what we did with the very first exercise, that they were playing with offering a conviction approach that they knew wouldn't work and watching the reaction, and then offering one that would and watching the reaction. Content free. So very quickly you can get this information, yes? Also, I would draw your attention to, and I moved these around to show the sequence, I would draw your attention to that you get the representational system in the convincer strategy, but don't they need a representational system to figure out what content? Right, that's what I get at, is that these are all, if you will, operating at the same time, and you can elicit them all at the same time. No, and probably not. I mean, there's just too many things to keep track of. So this is one way that you can organize this information in order to track on it and begin to collect what I consider to be, for these particular domains, decision, motivation, conviction, what are the meta-programs that one would most want to pay attention to. As I said, the Ross Stewart, Roger Bailey, Shelley Rose Charvet has another format. Robert Dilts, in his most recent consulting work that he's doing, teaches students yet another reduced set. And this makes good sense to me, because you want to have the set that applies to the context. As you are learning modeling, we want to make you aware that there's a larger set so that you can make that kind of a choice. And I was talking to the camera crew back there as well. It's not only different ones, but just like the different amounts of sugar and flour can make very different things, ranging from breads to, sweet cakes, so can the different amounts of these relative to each other, and also how they interact with each other. Because after all, if the person's making a decision, they're probably the authority in that area as well. But we have a certain point where we make sure we check about that, if you haven't already gotten it from the nonverbals or something in either a word or a grammatical structure. So are there any questions at this point about this as an overall look at these set of distinctions and how it is they can make a difference in your ability to understand how somebody does something, to select someone to do something where you figured out what decision processes, motivation processes, convincer processes would be most appropriate? Of course, that's pretty easy. What you do is you go find people who are good at that and elicit it from them. Ron, I see a question there.
In regards to beliefs, do you decide at one point in time to create a belief? Is that the sequence?
Oh, they wish. No. We build generalizations without thinking about it. And we'll get more into this in advanced strategies. A taster here is that people run their convincer strategies relative to their external environment in places like restaurants, sporting goods stores, shopping. In other words, they look at an item, is that the one I want? Does that fulfill my criteria? Do I have to see it so many times, and so forth? People left to their own devices, and after a personal setback, will often begin to review in their mind other occasions that they had setbacks and accidentally run their convincer strategy and go, Jesus, I can't do anything, or I'm no good at this, because they just did it in their mind, accidentally, as opposed to running it against real stuff in the world. So that's something to guard against. This is the idea you can't afford a negative thought idea, and the author of that book. Well, I think you can afford them, but you kind of want to look at them, and you want to keep them farther apart. Now, on the other hand, Ron, to go with what I was talking about earlier with the scope and the idea of extending the date, you can convince someone that they've known you longer than they actually have by purposely helping them to run their convincer strategy. You talk about building a belief. First got a taste of this, Robert Dilts several years ago did a demonstration, and it was about a woman she wanted to do something in her life. She wanted to put herself forward and run her own business. And she didn't think that she could do it. And it was like she just didn't have the conviction. And Robert said, because she was very capable, this had already come out over several days of seminar. And so Robert turned to her and said, well, how many examples would you need? And she said, 10. Now, that's quite a number. If your restaurants have to go through 10 examples and your criteria is similar to mine, I should say we go to dinner together because you found a good restaurant. You put it to the test. But as far as making a generalization you can act on in the world, that could take a lot of time. Having 10 experiences close enough together in time that you notice them, that you would build the generalization. Right? Because if she had like one year and one 4 years later and so on, you'd be too far apart. So Robert turns to her and says, so can you imagine an example of where you really did have competence? In other words, she could make a decision that she'd done that once. And she said, yes, I can find an example. And Robert said, okay, I want you to think of that example 10 times in a row. And come out, meaning, go in and think about it and live that, and come out, make a break state, and go back in and do it 10 times. And so she does that, and we're waiting, And then she opens her eyes, and Robert says, are you convinced that you could? And she says, yes. Wow. Yeah, all right, so, whoa, what just happened? It was a purposeful use of a convincer strategy. Now, when I was going into the financial markets, this is exactly what I did, is that I went, I'm going to be a futures trader, which I've done a couple of times, and I'm about to do again. Things are going to be happening. There's an election. Markets always kind of shift about this time. And I'm going to be a futures trader? And then I remembered back that when I was a kid in junior high, I used to take out the stock market page and actually cut out. I hadn't realized in years, I cut out different stocks, TRW, IBM, Lockheed, some of them are still around. And I used to tape together the prices, and I would try to get my father to buy them, which he didn't. I'd be rich now if he had. So I had that incident. And then I had another incident where a teacher had organized a business, and I was the treasurer, and buying and selling, and I was keeping the books for it. And so I had that incident. And I took these different incidents, and similar to the lady, I put them together and I ran them one after another and fulfilled my evidence and criteria pattern. And then I could call a guy up in Chicago who'd offered the money for a demonstration project, and I said, put it in the account, we can do this. I could do it at that point, yeah. Now, I understood that there were still things for me to learn. I'm very feedback oriented. But I, at that point, had the conviction that, yeah, I have experience here. Because we all have different kinds of experience. Same thing with someone who convinces themselves they're not athletic. They have a number of experiences where other people, let's go cycling, let's go hiking for 25 miles. Something they go, oh, I don't want to do that. And by not participating, or people that decide they can't dance because they haven't. Isn't this a curious thing? This is the dog that didn't bark in the night. They didn't dance. They went to a dance and they didn't dance. They went to a dance and they didn't dance. They did that for a few years or several times, and they go, oh, I can't dance. Right. Whereas if you turn it the other way, and you go back in your past, either a short distance or a longer one, and you go, well, here's the time that I went hiking as a kid, and this is the summer that I bicycled, and there was the time I did the canoeing or whatever it is, and you put those together close enough in time, and you run the examples either with the number of your conviction or with the amount of time you need, and you become convinced. Well, yeah, I'm kind of athletic. I mean, that's a shift to go from one to the other. And then you can begin to engage the world with a new sense. And of course, as you do that, you're building new examples.
And thank you for that, because one of the things that I learned when using timelines the other day is that with my task over there, I was deleting a lot of the examples which would be useful for conviction.
Yeah, and again, putting a timeline somewhere can be useful to keep it out of your way. Right, you don't want it right here, and you're kind of going through it, and you're like, oh, this is deja vu all over again. Yeah. On the other hand, yes, some people put the past behind them because they don't want to remember it, and then, as Santayana said, they're destined to repeat it. It's like, wow, man, drinking too much leads to hangovers. When am I going to remember that? Yeah. So there is a whole thing here about how the timeline interacts, how we utilize time, interacts with the submodalities, interacts with the evidence patterning, the way in which we build up a generalization, also called a conviction and also called a belief. Somebody says, I believe I'm athletic. I believe I can do something. Why? Because they've got examples back there. and the examples are sufficient that they've convinced themselves. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, it's the same context and it's not. Restaurants, but they were different restaurants. And one of the ways to understand context marking, this is again going to the work I'm doing with Steve, is context marking can be done by a sense of what's meta. And you're saying the meta category is restaurants, whereas we actually didn't check with him. And it might be more about a kind of experience is the category. And these are experiences I like, and these are experiences I don't like, and actually might be in different categories. No, I'm just saying that, yeah, I know, it's curious how people put this together. So he's seeking experiences that he wants to enjoy. And he brings criteria to that experience, right? And he has a number of criteria, and it also sounded like from your description, and I'm just going from the description for the purposes of an explanation, that in one case, he's actually got all the criteria operating at one time. He goes, this restaurant meets a lot of my criteria. In the other case, it sounds like he goes in and he tests for one criteria, then he tests for another one, then he tests for another one. I'm just supposing I'm hearing that. Now, whether that's the case or not, let me give you a different example. Gentlemen, it's where you see what she looks like, and you like that. And so you go with that, and then you realize, oh, there's more to a relationship than what the person looks like. And then it's like maybe the sound of the voice, or maybe the sound of the voice, or maybe the sound of the voice. And you go, and then you go, okay, so now I'm testing for voice. Oh, but that look, and so then you've got these two, so you're still there. And then, of course, we find out things about people that we didn't want to know. She has a pet iguana. Well, that's cool. Eclectic, and so on. And of course, I can make the example as wonderful or horrifying, and you get the idea. As opposed to collecting your criteria at the beginning, based on experience. Not like you're making it up. It's based on experience. And you're making it up. My point is that you make it from the experience. Instead of like doing one at a time, you go, well, this is important, and that's important, and that's important. Wrap it up so that when you go into the situation, even if it's initial attraction you see, something you feel, of course, that's the way we are, you begin to test for those other criteria. And who knows? You go, well, not really a match, but wow, you're a terrific person. I know somebody you might like. Or it might even be, wow, it'd be great to hang out with you. A different category, friend, as opposed to partner. And this is about getting criteria all in the same place. Yeah. And you get curious because people, they sort of make a decision, because they find that, and then they want to motivate themselves, and then you're really basically trying, your solution is the problem. Yeah.
I was just going to share an example of that. If that's
Okay, yeah.
A friend of mine was approaching 40, and she had been in a number of relationships, maximum 2 years. Never went beyond 2 years. And she did exactly what you're talking about. Through some NLP processes, she sat down and established what the heck am I looking for in a person, in a mate. And that's essentially what she's looking for. She got all the criteria sorted, and within 6 months she'd met the guy, happily married, family, and da-da-da-da.
Yes.
A really beautiful match. Because when she finally told him what she'd done, he was a little bit horrified. But it worked. It worked really, really well.
And it's all in the framing at that point.
That's right.
It's like, I created this so that I would make sure I only attracted you.
That's right.
That's what needed to be said. Along that line is in terms of the content. Richard Bandler tells the story of a client where he wanted to get in a relationship, and he knew his criteria fully and completely. He knew what she should look like. He knew how she should dress. He knew what hairstyle she should have. Well, now come on, this is a guy who had a custom-built home. He had a customized van and a customized car. He'd actually designed the kitchen the way he wanted it to be, and now he was ready to get married. He's a very successful California business, and he wanted a customized wife. And he would meet someone that would be pretty close, and he would say, go to this salon and, on me, you know, and go to this clothing store on me, and just pick some things out and just tell them it's on my account. And at first they were delighted. This was a good deal. Thing is, they came out, they found that they didn't really have a choice of the hairstyle. And they went over to the other store, and even if it wasn't the clothes they wanted, this was where they could buy some clothes. And then, of course, they'd come back, and there might be problems with the voice. You know, and so they'd go again, and the guys come to Richard for a solution. Like, what's he going to do here? And Richard says, it's the wrong category. And the guy's like, what? And he's saying, you can build a car. You can customize a kitchen. You can just tell the architect what to build in a house. Those are things. With people, you find out all the ones that are available that are the way you like, and you find the one that matches closest to that wants to be with you. You choose from the selection. They're talking about a misapplication of the content meta program. And other businesses do this as well. Businesses don't realize that you are not getting a robot, you're getting a person. And so you can utilize this material, this meta program material, to find people that are close to the patterning that you know will both allow them to do well in the job and feel good about doing well in the job. They'll feel they're in a place where they are valued for what they can do, what they know, how they apply themselves, works the job. And you can write advertisements that lean in the direction of attracting people with that patterning, and then you select from the ones that are offered, that offer themselves, and take the best one. That, of course, you can work the salary and the rest with. There's an inexactness here. There's a willingness to understand that we are each unique, even though we have some patternings we share. What I'd like to do is pause on this, let you digest this a little bit, think it over. When you come back, we're going to show you how quickly you can do a full elicitation and how you can utilize that in your work, in your consulting, in your counseling, in your own lives. How's that? Okay.